They have, they have less traffic, less impact on the water and sewer infrastructure. And so, and at the same time, a project with 90 units can generate $500 million of assessed value, can generate $12.5 million a year in annualized tax revenue that's an annuity for the community. So we've been adopting this in every neighborhood. In Weston, we own a 120-acre site that we're building 125 homes. We could have probably done it maybe, more, 3, 4, 5, 1,000 homes, but we built 125. That project's going to generate $250 million of assessed value and have around $6 to $8 million of an annuity for the community with less impact. So I think we're all innovating, bringing these amazing minds to come to our community, but we're also programming our projects differently that I think is going to be much more sensitive to the neighborhoods and communities that we're building.
Thanks, David. Some of those innovations that you mentioned seem to be ways in which you are mitigating against rising costs because development has become more expensive in this market. I'm going to give this question back to you now, actually. What are some of the drivers, what are some of the drivers of costs in construction and development in this market today?
I think it's a shortage of labor. I think that material costs, there has been a lot of consolidation in materials, whether it's steel, whether it's concrete, so there's less suppliers, let's say, so the competitive pricing has been somewhat more difficult. But I think the biggest challenge is a reduction in labor, and so, costs are comprised of, labor, material, and profit margin and overhead. And a lot of the subcontractors that we have good relationships with, A, they don't want to overextend themselves. And B, they have to grow based on the amount of labor that they have and the amount of qualified labor that they have. And so, I think that's one element of it. And I think the other, obviously, is the amount of construction that's going on, not only in the private sector, but also in the public sector. And that's creating a huge strain on the labor force. But I think Miami and South Florida is resilient. I think we find ways to solve our issues, but at the same time, a lot of these costs are driving prices. And for us, we really would need to be cognizant of really trying to balance and focus on pricing our projects to really what the product and value is, what the real demand is. And I think it's what's going to control our supply. The fact that construction costs are where they are today, I promise you a lot of locations are not going to be built. They're not going to be built in this cycle or the next. And so, I think overall it's healthy, it's good, and I think the fact is we are all aware and we're on the ground trying to analyze and understand where costs are going. And the more analysis we do and the more partnerships and relationships we have with the construction industry to really make us feel like we're in this together in order to kind of have a balanced, sustainable economy, I think the better our city's going to be.
Did anyone else want to add on the question of costs and labor?
We've actually seen costs stabilize. There was, I was talking earlier about how the market became sober, and based on our deposit structure, there's been less announcements of new projects. In the past year versus the prior couple of years, we've seen a lot less new projects being announced, and so we're seeing now the adjustment. We're seeing contractors that had an overabundance of projects. Now, they have 3 projects completing and maybe 1 or 2 projects that are replacing them, and so it's actually created somewhat of a stabilization of price. We're not seeing them dip, but we're seeing more stabilized, and so I think that's good. And the market is adjusting itself without having to go through some type of boom or bust as we did in prior cycles. In this case, it's kind of adjusting, and again, it's mostly because of our deposit structure, and we're only building what we're selling.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add to this?
Yeah, it's definitely a question of supply and demand, and many of the buildings that started early in this cycle are beginning to be completed. So I agree with Dan that more buildings are completed than the ones that are going to be starting. So it should ease up a little, but still today it's a concern, and that's why you have to make sure that the projections that you do when you are planning a new development really make sense before jumping into them.
Thank you, Edgardo. And Alan, I welcome you to answer that question if you wish, but I'd also like to ask you about the challenges that you see in this market. What are the most concerning challenges for you as it pertains to hindering the growth that this market is seeing?
As for the first question, I think I cannot add anything else of what has been answered, so that's why I didn't volunteer. Challenges in the future is guessing. And the only little thing I would like to add in costs is that all of us in this conversation, we have condos in mind. Very expensive condos obviously can allow higher costs. But if you're doing, for example, like I'm doing also, rental apartments, well, the margins are tight. And sometimes you say, numbers don't work. Then you sharpen the pencil. Then you say, numbers don't work. Then you take a scotch. So maybe they start working now. So in certain areas are pretty tight, especially in the rental market. Where are we going? Remember that we are in a business, I'm talking about myself, but I know these guys. And we're in a business of dreamers. From the time we start thinking about the concept of the project until the time we deliver is 5 years later. And obviously in 5 years many things can happen. So I think that we know that we're a growing city. We know that the city has a lot of future. We know that it's ups and downs, but with a constant up. Like the mayor was saying during the down, everybody said we're going to be here for many years. That tells you how much the experts know. And we were only for a couple of years. If in 2010 or in 2009 you would say, in 2011 we would see a lot of cranes, people would say, are you nuts or what? And look what's happening. So we have a city that now has certain unconnected dots. Let's say you have downtown, then you have the design district, you have Wynwood. What we will see is the connection of those dots. And a growing city. So I think that simply the front lines on ocean, there's very scarce. So we have to start learning how to be a city without an ocean and living inward a little bit more. And we have that ability to grow, and we will grow with the ups and downs. But we will grow in all aspects. I mean, from condos to rentals to office buildings to everything. Shops, restaurants, everything.
Thank you, Alan. Dan, what most concerns you about what you're seeing in the market today?
Well, Alan's given us a very interesting perspective on behavior of buildings. We're dreamers and so forth. And I have to say, buildings behaved really badly in 2008 and 9. And so we hope they don't behave this bad in this next cycle. Challenges would be, getting, and we have people that come from out of town into Miami. They see these high rises and, some developers that are not from here. They don't understand a local market. They get ahead of themselves, and you hear stories where developers can come in and they'll just launch project. They'll add too much inventory to the market, not really understanding what the dynamics of the market and how the market works. And so we have to make sure that the market remains sober. We have to make sure the lending community doesn't over lend to developers that are inexperienced and don't understand how the Miami market works. And so far we've done pretty well. We've seen, like I said, a slowdown in new construction, a slowdown in new announcements. And the biggest challenge would be if somebody were to come in and start adding too much inventory to the market.
Thanks, Dan. Edgardo, what are your thoughts? What are the biggest challenges that faces South Florida today?
I think what I worry the most about is perception, because perception becomes reality, and sometimes the media and the people that inform about statistics and numbers really does not understand how the new model in Miami is working today. When they talk about 10,000 or 15,000 units in the market, they don't tell the fact that of all those units, 80 to 90% of those are already sold. And not only sold, but they're sold with 50% deposits from buyers that make those transactions very, very solid. And also that most of those deposits have been used in construction, so the leverage that is on that project is very, very significantly below what the leverage was in the prior cycle. We are not financing more than 20 to 30% of cost today as far as bank leverage. So the reality is that the market is very, very healthy, and as long as we keep the same system in place and we are really continue to be very much in line with what we're using today, the market may slow down in sales, and instead of selling the building in 3 or 6 months, we may sell it in 12. But the reality is that if the people start perceiving that this is an overheated market, then we can run into trouble. But the reality is different than that.
Thanks, Edgardo. And David, what are your thoughts on challenges facing this market today?
I echo what Edgardo said. I think there's some different perspective that I'm seeing, which is, why is economic development, why is change good for our community? And I think that is important because, in our business, we are catalysts to change. We're catalysts to find voids of a product, of an asset, of a development, and we look to fill that. But when we're looking to fill that to the new market, we also have to understand the impacts on the existing community. And what we've been trying to do is really engage the community to kind of understand and realize that this development or that development is going to improve their quality of life. And going back to increased property values, or going back to creating finances to support mass transit, tax revenues to support better schools, or more teachers, or more police officers, or better parks. And so for us, I think my concern is that our industry needs to do a better job of educating and also memorializing exactly our vision for our community, and try to bring it in line with the vision of the existing community.
Thanks, David. Very well put. And on the note of vision, actually, before I ask my final question, if anyone wants to ask questions to the panelists, we'll have a very brief Q&A, so I invite you to stand in line on that microphone over there. But for my final question, on that note of vision, I think we're all in agreement that Miami-Dade and South Florida has a very bright future ahead. I'd like for the developers to share what they are most looking forward to in the future of Miami and in South Florida, in what it can become. Dan, I'd like to start with you. What are you most looking forward to in the future of South Florida?
I'm looking forward to really seeing, we're seeing the completion of Brickell and what's happening in Brickell, but of course, Miami World Center, where we're developing the Paramount, to see the amount of multifamily units being built, of course, Paramount, the only luxury condo being built. But then, you have hotel, you have a huge brand new convention center coming, and then we have the mall, Miami World Center, which is going to be a 765,000 square foot mall, plus outdoor mall similar to Lincoln Road. And so the impact of having that kind, and again, the impact of the retail coming to Miami World Center, Brickell City Center, all the redevelopment of the retail in downtown Miami, that is going to change the city of Miami forever. That is going to make we have never developed our urban core. We've seen in the last cycle, we've added a lot of residential units, but to add over 2 million square feet of retail, restaurants, lounges, entertainment, now couple that with what's existing with, obviously the museums that are under construction, the American Airlines Arena, the Performing Arts Center, this is going to be a significant city. And a city, if you look at any city in the United States, no city has the opportunity Miami has to become, to create this urbanization, because, we have an international presence in this city. In comparison to other cities in the United States, people are accustomed from the countries that they come from to live in a multifamily mixed-use environment. And so people that are going to come to Miami, I just feel there's going to be more attraction. We're seeing people from California that are actually considering on moving to Miami, and you'd say, well, who would leave California weather to come to Miami? And so, and of course the Northeast is a given, but we're going to see more people, I think, as millennials are becoming more mobile. They're not going to be tied to a certain area. They're going to see Miami as really, and it's been called, as we know by Departures Magazine, America's City of the Future, and that's really where it's headed.
Thank you, Dan. Alan, what are you most looking forward to?
I'm looking for us, to get out of our properties. Because what we look is, we buy a piece of property, we define what we think is the best product, we build the best product, we sell it, we lease it. But we look at properties, not a city. And that's to me the biggest challenge of Miami. And I take advantage of any place where people are listening to me to say it, starting with our mayors, our authorities, etc. There's not one single city in this planet that it's a real city that has not an important public transportation system. In Miami, we don't have it. We have a pathetic public transportation system. We need to change that. All what we build, from restaurants to condos to museums, all are for the people, and people move, and people cannot only rely on cars. So I think that we have to start putting our voices together. Now they're starting to get a movement of protest, of people saying traffic is a disaster. Yeah, but that's not enough. I'm involved in the DDA. This morning I was in UM trying to put together a group of students to start writing papers about this and publish and making some noise and making maybe some people uncomfortable. We brag about all these planes coming from the whole world. And that's true, they're coming, and more every day. We owe it to them, we owe it to us. We need a city with a huge transportation system. We need to think about this, we need to do those things. And if we don't have the money, so what? We'll find it. But there's not one city, New York, London, Paris, choose Madrid. There's not one city, Shanghai. There's not one big city that hasn't had it. People do not rely on cars. So we are not LA. We need a public transportation system. And with that, Miami will keep exploding. And that's what I think it's our biggest challenge as a community, not individual businesses. Because more or less, we have lived enough through ups and downs to still be here. But as a city, we need that. And if you guys can help, make noise, bless you.
I did.
Thank you, Alan. Edgardo, what do you look the most forward to when you look at the future of South Florida?
Well, I definitely agree with Alan on what he's saying, and we all need to work together to do that. Unfortunately, the city has been broken down into too many municipalities and too many things that look only for themselves and not as an overall thing. But both transportation and another thing that Alan failed to mention, but I know he's very involved because we're together at the University of Miami board is great education. We're really creating a great university. No big city has continue to grow without having a great platform for education. And I think that the University of Miami is really getting there, and we all need to help on doing that. But what I'm looking forward the most is to see some of those beautiful buildings that collectively we're building completed, because I think that is going to change the face of Miami. I already drive to Coconut Grove every time when I take my kids to school and I see Davis buildings and I say, oh my God, these are amazing already. Imagine when they're finished. So I can't wait to see that finish.
Thanks, Edgardo. And David, the final word. What are you most looking forward to?
I think everyone spoke very well. I think a diversified economy. I think when you look at healthcare, and I sit on the board of Miami Children's Hospital, and I hear about all the other hospitals, whether it's Baptist doing a huge cancer institute, or Jackson and the University of Miami expanding. I just think healthcare, education, and other business lines that we could foster now that our community and our city is really an amazing place to live and